You're listening to the Limitless Broadcasting Network.
Your whole life can change in an instant. About 50 million adults in the United States have chronic pain, and because of a car accident, Robby is one of them. In their marriage vows, Robby and Sammi promised to stand by one another and provide strength when needed. And lately, they've been facing some of their biggest challenges. Join them as they share the ups and downs of living with chronic pain.
Hello.
Hey. So we are super excited today.
Absolutely.
We have a very special episode
of The Painful Truth of Living with Chronic Pain.
Yes.
And we have a special guest for today.
Yes, we have Anaïs Webster Mennuti, who's here talking about her documentary that she's working on. Would you like shots with that? We talked about it a little bit in our last episode. So we're just so excited to have you on and talk about it.
Thank you. Thank you. Once I heard that, I was like, oh, thank you for the shout out. We love talking about, we love talking about the documentary.
Yes, of course.
Sammi told me she tagged you in our last episode, and that's how you guys got in contact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
She did, yes. I was like, oh, that's cool. We're making it out into the world a little more. So
Exactly. Yeah, got to spread the word, you know? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
So how about we start with, how about you introduce yourself first?
Perfect. I can do that. So my name is Anaïs Webster Mennuti, and I am a pharmacist. And so that is how I got involved with this project. I was in chain retail pharmacy for many years. I started as a technician at Walgreens when I was a student, was an intern there. And then I went over to Walmart when I graduated, and I was there full-time until 2019. I still would pick up shifts there until 2021. And I currently work for a hospital system, and I just noticed a shift in pharmacy. And it was during COVID when everything was happening, and I was like, Walmart actually, for those of you who don't know pharmacy that well, Walmart tends to treat its pharmacists a little bit better than some of the other chains.
That's what she says.
Yes.
Yeah, they really do. And so honestly, Walmart treated us pretty well, and they kind of did what they could with the resources they had, but it still really took a turn when COVID happened, because you can only do so much with just the increased shot load. So at first they were doing, I again wasn't working there full time. I was just picking up shifts on my days off from the hospital. But they went from having these giant shot clinics that everyone was having, lots of support, lots of text, to like, we're just going to pivot that into the store and into the regular workflow. And meanwhile, I'm on pharmacy social media a lot, and I'm seeing pharmacy Twitter and all of the different things. It's not just Oregon. It's not just here. It's all over the country. People are like, something happened. COVID didn't cause any of this. These issues go way back, but something during COVID, because of the workload balance, just shifted within pharmacy. People were leaving. They couldn't, people weren't putting up with this anymore. People weren't able to fill their prescriptions. And so I'm actually a writer outside of pharmacy as my hobby. And I was talking to one of my writing friends. I would text her tweets. And so I would be like, look at this tweet about pharmacy. Look at this tweet about pharmacy. And she knows nothing about pharmacy. So she's like, oh, wow, that's seems really bad. And I was like, oh, it is. Don't worry. You're not wrong.
Don't worry. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I told her one day, so I got off a shift at the hospital, and I had recently worked a shift at Walmart. And I was like, oh, yeah, a lot of the pharmacists and all of the pharmacists and techs from one of the local chains came over to work at the hospital. And one of the techs was like, oh yeah, when I left, we were 3,000 prescriptions behind.
Yep.
And Kim is her name. So Kim is like, I don't have any context. I like, what does that mean? Like, how far? I was like, oh, at least a week.
Yep.
Minimum.
So
And
3,000 means a week.
Depending on
3,000
the
prescriptions,
location.
depending. Go, you can explain, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it depends how many they do a day, but
because I don't want the average viewer or listener to be like, okay, what does that actually mean?
What is that?
I'm kind of in that same boat. She's a pharmacist. She's been a pharmacist
perfect. Love
for
it.
years, and she breaks it down, but give that more context. So 3,000 depending on the facility is a week.
Yeah, about a week.
Yeah, so depending on the facility, so like a lot of stores will do, like a busier store may do like 700 a day,
right.
Or like, but this store probably was doing like 500 a day, maybe a little like 3 to 500 a day, and they were 3,000 prescriptions behind. So we're talking
would
like
they send in other, like, I know I keep referring to her because
no worries.
Work for
CVS,
CVS, and I remember you telling me one of your stores was so far behind they were sending in extra texts.
Yeah, they would do that.
They
sometimes.
do something like that
at that store. So I found out later, because they all work with me now. I found out some details about what would happen, and so what usually would happen was it wasn't a 24-hour store, so they would just have people stay overnight and try to catch up.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And they would just have them fill through the night, and like people would volunteer because they're like, it's so bad for us during the day. It wasn't necessarily extra people. It was just their staff being like, please let us stay overnight so we can try to catch up a little bit.
Oh my gosh.
And so in a normal pharmacy workflow, say you're not behind. So for the general audience, you show up with your prescription or it's sent over electronically. You have a queue. It says how many you have to type. A technician types it in. Pharmacist checks what was typed in for clinical accuracy to make sure there's no drug interactions, etc. Goes through insurance. Another technician fills it. Pharmacist does the final check on it on the product, and then you sell and you cancel it. So you kind of have a work queue of how many prescriptions are to be done and where the prescriptions are in the different stages.
Okay.
But in this pharmacy, they were so far behind, I found out that they had nothing filled on their shelves. So usually you go into a store and there's like all the bins behind you and they have prescriptions like ready to go. There was nothing because they're so far behind. They couldn't even get anything filled. So they had a line wrapped around their building, like going outside of people inside the store. And so a tech would be standing at the register going, sorry, it's not filled for you. Can you stand there for the time it takes me to go fill it? And so they'd fill their prescription real quick if it was like 1 or 2. If it was more than that, they'd be like, okay, can you stand over here to the side? We'll try to work you in and get it filled. And then they call them back in line and people would scream at them. And it was terrible. Like, it was awful. Like, one person said, he's like, the day I quit, and he just like walked off. He's like, he was a male technician, and a woman followed him into the bathroom because he had to pee like a normal human. So he stepped out of that giant line to go pee, and she followed him in to yell at him and go, why aren't you filling my prescription right now?
While he's peeing?
While he's peeing, like, this guy's trying to pee, like.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and so all of this, and I learned this actually not too long ago when I was working with him, but all of this stuff is going on in the background in pharmacy, and like the general public is like starting to realize it because they're like, I can't get my prescription filled. And that's a huge patient safety issue. We want to fill prescriptions.
Right, exactly.
Paid to fill prescriptions. So that's what we tell people. It's like, if we're not filling prescriptions, there's no like money. That's a whole different issue. Is there money coming in even when you're filling prescriptions? But that's like a deeper topic we can get into. But like,
why isn't there any money coming in then? Since you brought it up, you gotta explain.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
Gotta explain that. So explain.
So basically, in a normal situation in commerce,
right,
for services, you pay services. You like, say you're McDonald's. We'll go with the fast food metaphor because would you like shots with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
So say you're paying for your fries, right? They buy, potatoes, oil, labor, etc., and it costs a certain amount to make some French fries.
Right.
And the customer comes up to the counter, buys their fries, and they make a profit.
Right.
In pharmacy, oftentimes, unless you are not taking insurance, you don't make a profit. Nope. So for a lot of prescriptions, when you run it through insurance, you have to pay a certain amount to buy the drug.
So the pharmacy has to pay.
The pharmacy has to pay to
obtain the drug.
Yeah, to obtain the product, kind of like McDonald's has to pay for the potatoes
Right.
and the oil and stuff.
Okay.
So you have to pay for the drugs to sit on your shelf, so you have them.
Okay.
Say a drug cost you for example, we'll use a lower cost drug because it happens with low cost and high cost drugs.
Right.
And say a drug costs $10.
Okay.
When you bill it through insurance, the insurance company might only pay you $7.
Yep.
Why is that?
And so, yeah, so you can definitely jump in and explain some of this too.
You're good. No, you're doing a great job.
Okay. And so it's complicated. So a lot of these, and this is why it's like, a lot of this is just really opaque and confusing, even to other pharmacists, because your insurance company, how drug pricing works is not clear at all. Like, it's very opaque intentionally how all of these contracts are done. And especially if you work in a chain like I did, I didn't know how any of that worked. I do a little bit more from this project, and I'll try to explain it, but a lot of these contracts are very opaque, and they're like almost like things are bundled together. So it's like part of you're buying like in your contract, you're like buying a lot of drugs at once. Okay. And so like an individual drug, you know how much it costs for you to go purchase it from the wholesaler who sells you the drug, but you may not know going into it what insurance company is going to reimburse you how much money.
Okay.
And so you can't not take insurance because a lot of patients can't afford the medication at the list price.
Right.
So like for that $10 drug, sure, a patient could probably just pay the cash price and take the medication, and then you make money on that. But if your drug is $700 worth of insulin and you don't make your cost back for that, so the patient can't pay you $700.
So the pharmacy just writes that off?
Essentially. So a lot of these bigger stores, it's not every single prescription. So I won't say that it's every prescription, but you essentially, a lot of stores use it as a loss leader. So they just want you in the store to buy more expensive things that they actually can mark up. OTC products.
Profit.
Yes.
Or like,
so they can profit, yes.
Yeah, they want you
like
shopping in the store. Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so they want you to buy a fork for a 4,000% markup, like the plastic pack of forks. And you're in the store shopping while your prescription's being filled. You can buy a bunch of stuff that gives them profit. You can buy your cold medicine, your allergy medication, where you do actually make a profit from. While, okay, maybe they lost some from their prescription, but hey, at least I got you in the store. Right. But that's why you may not necessarily make money on every single prescription that's coming in.
Exactly.
Now, I'm sorry I keep jumping in.
Keep stopping. I
love it. It's good. This is why you need to be here, because I'm just like,
breaking it down for the common folk, because if people listen to this episode, I want them to be able to say, okay, that makes sense to me. And that's why, definitely. So I started doing research about your movie. Would you like shots with that?
Yes.
When she told us that you were going to be a guest.
Yeah.
And one thing that blew my mind is a woman had a miscarriage one night.
Yes.
She went to work the next day with a pair of Depends on and just kept it moving. That blew my mind.
Yes.
Yes.
And I remember when I was in the hospital once and she was trying to get off work. And that was a big stretch. Like I was literally in the hospital and she left because she was like, I have to work the next day.
Right.
And another thing she says is kind of retail pharmacy kind of brainwashes the pharmacists about trying to call off, getting time off, all of that.
Yes.
And she kind of saw that more when she left the retail side.
Yes.
Really, like when you're in it,
you don't really see it.
Yeah, you just, and I know that that's part of it when you guys are trying to do like your interviews and talk to pharmacists and pharmacy techs, they're scared because you don't want to lose your job. You don't want repercussions. I know that's a big thing for you guys, trying to seal identities and make people comfortable with it. And it's like now that I'm like a year, 2 years out from having worked at CVS, like, you really see the damage that it does to you, like not only physically, but like mentally, and how you look at things. Like now, if I want to call off of work, it still makes me like a little nervous, and they're just like, oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, feel better.
Yeah,
Yeah, let us know when you're
yeah,
feeling better.
So,
that's good. But yeah, I can talk a little bit about that person. So he's
okay.
actually a trans man, and so he was in that situation, and so he's having this miscarriage and just didn't even feel like he could not be at work. And like that's not an uncommon story. We
No.
hear that a lot, actually. People either miscarrying in the store, they realize they have started to miscarry or have gone into labor. We have a lot of people who've shared stories with us where they do actually physically go into labor and will wait like while laboring until their store either closes
Mm-hmm.
or someone comes for coverage because they feel they a lot of times they'll prey on the empathy of pharmacists and technicians because we
Right.
That's
really
true.
do genuinely care about our patients. And so
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
people are like, they won't get their stuff filled if I'm not here.
Right.
Exactly.
But
And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what's happening.
Yeah, that's exactly what they do.
I'm sure other people are going to have this reaction too, and
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
definitely explain this to me. But if
yeah.
you were in labor,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't you just be like, "Fuck this noise, I'm out of here"?
I mean, now I would. Like, I think
Right.
back about like my behavior now versus my behavior previously.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so now, like, because another example that gets brought up a lot in the pharmacy community is the, I know you mentioned it on the last episode, the pharmacist who died in
Yes.
Indiana at a CVS,
Mm-hmm.
who actually was having heart attack symptoms and waited in the store until her coverage arrived and had unfortunately passed away
Yeah.
before that had happened. And they did like they actually did CPR in the store. It was like in the pharmacy, like someone had gone back there and started like doing CPR on her.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's like a really, really tragic story, and that's part of the like whole brainwashing is like, yeah, now if I'm having a heart attack, like I'm gonna be like, peace, I'm shutting the gate
Exactly.
down and I'm leaving.
Mm-hmm.
But they make it so that you feel like you're gonna lose your job.
Yep.
Yes.
It's also the expectations of your patients and your customers,
Right.
Right.
because they don't understand. Like we have a lot of people who are like, oh, my store just got like your store maybe gotten like robbed or something.
Yep.
And they're
Yes.
like taking care of it. Like yeah, from the last episode, you're taking care of that, and people are just mad that it's closed. So I
Yep.
actually
Yes.
thought of that. I had a couple stories from my time that were just like interesting and like you're just like, oh my gosh. One time we had an unfortunate incident happen in a store where they had to close the store down and bring in some like crisis negotiations, like a hazmat team for a person who tried to harm themselves in the store. And it's like a news article, you can find it.
Mm-hmm.
And the people, we felt like we're just outside of the store, like because I wasn't at work yet. There were people like inside the store at work.
Mm-hmm.
They got a lot of people out of the store, but people were so ruthless to the managers who had to stand outside of this store to be like, we're closed today, we're closed, I'm sorry, we're closed. And they were just getting screamed at and cursed at because people couldn't handle the fact that someone had an emergency
Right.
enough, like big enough that they had to shut the store down.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing, like I was in a store that had a fire in it as well. And we had a fire and people were still not understanding like, oh, but why can't I go in? There's like smoke billowing
My God.
Why can't I go
into
in?
the sky.
Oh my gosh.
Like you can see from like miles away.
Horrible.
And people are still like, but I don't understand. And so you really buy into like,
Mm-hmm.
I have to be there.
Yeah.
But I feel like they do that intentionally to brainwash you guys. Like this is
Yeah.
me not as a pharmacist.
Mhm.
Believe me, I am. And we're gonna get into this further. I'm just so fascinated.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love this
I am a
fascination.
producer. I've worked on Netflix shows. I've worked on Hulu
Yeah.
shows.
Mhm.
Oh,
I've,
we should talk later.
absolutely.
For sure.
But I'm just. She let me know that there was a problem.
Yeah.
Like if I wouldn't have married her, I would have never known.
Right. Mhm.
Right. Yes.
Because when you first walk in and you, as a consumer of the pharmacy, if the pharmacist is not counting pills, you're just like, what is she doing?
Yeah. Yes.
Nothing. Right.
And that-
Oh, nothing. They're not doing anything.
That's
Exactly.
what the normal person things about
Yeah.
pharmacists.
Yes.
Now, you doing research, you told me that your first episode is actually gonna break down the basics of the actual
Yes.
pharmacy.
Right. Yeah.
And I think
Yes.
that is a great start.
Mm-hmm.
But before we jump into that, how did this idea come about? How did this?
But I know you texted Kimberly
Yeah, I
Kessler,
texted
right?
Kim. Yeah, I texted her, and I was just like, no one knows what's going on back here.
Right,
Like all
exactly.
this chaos is happening, and no one knows. And she says, "I have a friend who can help,"
Mm-hmm.
and that friend is Ethan. And Ethan is our cinematographer, and we
Okay.
just kind of ran with it because I was like, I don't know how to do it,
Okay.
but I was like, I want to do a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
she's like, I have a friend, and that friend can help. And we just like formed a little independent crew
Right.
and just started going.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And yeah,
So I'm going to jump it more in the film side of things and then say
yeah, do it.
more of the pharmacy things.
Just
Sure,
tell
I
us.
love it. Love it.
You got this idea and you were just like, that's how most independent projects start.
Mhm.
You get an idea
Yes.
in your head and you're just
Yeah.
like, let's go off and do
Let's
it.
go. Yes.
Let's go.
So you're crowdfunding this, correct?
Yes.
What is your
Yes.
overall goal for that?
So our crowdfunding, so I guess that's what I'll talk about the story of like how we started and
Yeah.
how we decided to do it, which is a little different than a lot of other films. So I'll kind of break that down for
Yes.
a general audience. So a lot of independent projects, they get the idea and they start going, but they secure all the money first.
Right.
A lot of films will get the financing ahead
Right.
of time
Mhm.
because
Exactly.
they're like, with no money, you can't do a film.
Right.
Mhm.
And so we went, this is so urgent. We are going to do this in a stepwise manner so
Right.
that we can do a few trips, like a trip at a time is how we started this project.
Okay.
We've since pivoted a little bit, but I'll start with our origin story.
Okay.
So we got on social media, we started building our brand and talking to people and like really building trust so people would tell us stories. And we did a lot of informal Zooms and we got enough to cut the trailer that is on our GoFundMe.
Right. Mhm.
And from that, we just like got people really excited. Hey, we were doing a thing. And so our first goal was just to crowdfund enough to take our first trip, which was to Oklahoma City.
Okay.
And so we're like, we need $22,000.
Mhm.
And we just kind of had different influencers like in the pharmacy community kind of retweet or
Yeah.
repost our stuff and get the GoFundMe out there, and people saw the video and just they opened their wallets and we were able to raise that money in 3 weeks. And then we
Nice.
took our first trip. And then we kept promoting the GoFundMe, and then we got enough money to go on a second trip.
Mhm.
And so a little bit of we have some opportunities for people, like the GoFundMe is one. We also offer some sponsorship opportunities and some producer opportunities for a little bit more money. So we got at that point we got a producer to sign on to kind of help us with the second trip.
Mhm.
And we were able to go to Missouri for our second trip and get some footage there. And then
How long are these trips? A weekend?
so these
Week?
Yeah, that's a great question. So these trips, the first one was 5 days
Okay.
in Oklahoma City. So we were down there for 5 days.
How
We
big is your
filmed
crew?
our crew. So it started off with 3 people. Now it's bigger.
Okay.
We're up to 8 people now.
Oh,
And
good.
so it's still pretty small for like
Yeah,
an independent film. So we have myself, we have two like pharmacists who are just on the producer side of things. We have our cinematographer, and then we have 2 camera operators, and one of them will usually double as sound.
Yeah, I was gonna
And
ask you about sound.
yeah, we have a sound person, and we have like a backup sound person. Ethan sometimes will bring his brother
Okay.
if neither one of them is available because he does sound too. So he's like, come on. And so sound person. And then Ethan actually has been the person who's done the editing as well as the shooting up until this point. So he is kind of doing double duty on both of those things.
So let me pause for a second. Most people don't know this, that when you're on location, the production company has to pay for all the flights, all the hotels. They have to put up everybody for the duration of the shoot. So when you travel, you have to pay all this overhead. So
yes, I appreciate that call out because that is really important. Because people were like really excited and they gave us this money, And a lot of people were like, okay, 22,000, that's got to be enough, right? And we're like, that's enough for one trip.
No.
Well, see, that's the reason why I want to drive this home is you guys are the production company, and
Yes.
it's expensive
Yep.
to produce media.
Yes.
And that's why I'm saying you have to do X, Y, and Z, because most people don't think about that. You have to
No.
get insurance, you have to rent
Yep.
cameras, you have to do meals, you have to do Ubers, whatever. And it just
All these
adds
little
up
things
and
add
adds
up. We because we went to a pharmacy conference for our last shoot, and we were able to get some footage there. We didn't factor in parking. We spent so much money on parking
Oh,
Yes.
because
man.
we were just like, we didn't even realize, like, we didn't factor that in as a line item. It was fine, but we were like, that costs a lot. And like for our team, we're in a unique situation where it's like, we do not exploit here at Shots with that, but we are kind of a very lean, aka a little bit broke production company.
Right.
And so it's a lot of volunteer hours.
Right.
And so like I haven't taken any money, our producers haven't, our crew has. We take care of the crew. And so we pay them for like being on location for the shoots. We when people are on a trip, for example, we're headed out to New York to capture some footage out there. And I can talk more about that trip, but I'll talk about the logistics, which are for that trip, you have to pay the day rate for your camera operators and your sound person, plus like you're saying, everyone's flights, hotel, renting a car. We don't own all of our gear. We're also most of our team's traveling across the country, so we're renting a lot of gear.
It's much easier to do that. Going to LA, renting the camera equipment there instead of bringing it. Because I've done that. I've flown with camera equipment, and you have to worry about checking it, and then you have to worry about if your lights are going to get broken while in baggage claim, and it's just so much easier to rent it
when you get there.
Yes, and we did that last time. We flew with all our stuff, and that's a huge expense too. You have giant oversized bags, and so you're looking at least $300 a bag each way, and so that was like $600+ just to fly the bags with all of our equipment. That's one thing I do really want to drive home is like it is very expensive to do a film, and as of right now, like we're open to all kinds of possibilities, but we are doing this all independently, crowdfunded and funded with a little bit of producer support.
Are you gonna pre-sell it after it's done? Are you working on pre-selling the finished product?
We are trying. That's one of the angles. We're like closing off no path right now, basically. And so if we had a streaming service who was interested in us, we would definitely go into talks with them about pre-selling it. I can't say too much because we don't really know yet, but there's a couple of different other production companies who have been talking to us because they really like the idea. And so that would change the game because they actually have like a lot more money than we do. So I can't say too much about that, but like that would be a huge game changer for us if we were going to go that route. But we have a plan. If we have to execute this as like fully crowdfunded, we have a plan for that too. So.
I mean, the more attention you have, the buyers will come, the Netflix will come, the Hulus will come. You'll have enough attention that they'll be like, we're going to buy this. And if you put it in a film festival, South by Southwest, Sundance, they're going to buy it.
Yes.
What are you shooting on? Like what kind of cameras?
Oh gosh, I wish Ethan were here. I know it's like I want to say it's like I know it's shot in 4K. That much I know. And I want to say that we had Canons last. Either we are going to do Canons this next time, or we had Canons this last time, and we're switching cameras.
I'm assuming you guys are going to stick with the same brand, so it's going to be easier in post to keep everything together. So if you had a Canon last time, you'll probably have a Canon this time. So, but
I will get those specs put in the show notes. I'll get those notes from Ethan so that our camera folks can take a look.
Yeah, that's all him.
So maybe we should start by saying, the actual premise of your documentary. We'll start there.
Let's start there. So yes, the whole premise of this is the general public when they walk up to a pharmacy, they're like, oh, cool, the pharmacist isn't doing anything if they're not physically counting pills. And so we want to sort of bring the public up to speed with, hey, one, we do more than that, because you can't even just start in with the issues. Like, the issues are mind-boggling and eye-opening and all of these kind of things, but it helps to be anchored, like,
yes,
what are you even doing back there, though? So that's where we're going to start, is just what is normal workflow for a pharmacy, so that it looks even more like jarring for the general public when we're like, well, there's actually rats in the wall at this one store, which is jarring to anybody. But then when you think, oh, these are prescriptions that go into someone's mouth, and there's rats there, that's like, whoa, that doesn't compute. Also, a lot of people don't realize how much stuff is done by the pharmacy that they thought was done at the doctor's office before we got prescriptions.
Right.
And so I'll explain a little bit of what I mean by that for the general audience, which is a lot of the, like, for example, insurance billing and making sure it's paid, like you are able to just walk up to the counter and pay. Say you have a copay. If you have an insurance card, you have a $10 copay, to make sure it's that much rather than $250.
Right.
Like, your doctor doesn't take care of any of that. You may be communicating with them, but it's all of your pharmacy is taking care of that.
I know a lot of people freak out about that. Oh,
They
it's
do.
$10.
Yeah.
I paid $10 the last time, and now it's $12.
Now it's how much?
Now it's $12. Yep, and people freak out, and you're just like, we don't control any of that, the pricing, and people freak out at us. Or like, for example, with drug interactions, I will reiterate this very strongly for the general public. There are a lot of, if you take this drug A with drug B together, that will kill you.
Very bad.
Yep. Or if the dose of drug A is too high, it will kill you. And so there's a lot of interactions that they get missed, unfortunately, when they come from the doctor to the pharmacy.
Yep. One
of the issues is, in American healthcare, you have to see a PCP, specialist over here, specialist over here, specialist over here. Those systems don't talk. And I feel like that's really important for this audience, because a lot of your people watching are seeing multiple specialists, and those doctors don't talk to each other.
When they should.
They should. They definitely should.
No.
But they don't. And so your pharmacist is your last line of defense to be like, these drugs don't mix. You should not take them. And so then take that really important piece of information where they're actually protecting your kidneys from failing because these drugs don't play nice together, or protect you from, like, bleeding out is another option with some of them. Like, you could bleed out from some drugs. There's lots of things that could happen to you if the drugs interact poorly. And think about the environment we're in. Phones ringing, you have your short staff, someone leaning over the counter going, excuse me, like, there's all of this chaos. And we want people to ask questions. We don't want to cut ourselves off so we're not available for questions. We just need more people back there.
Exactly.
So that everyone can take care of a different step.
So the way the company regulates cost is not giving you enough tech help.
Yeah, labor.
Right?
Labor.
Yes. So they don't want to spend the money to actually staff you guys up that you actually need to
they
run.
They don't want to? Yep.
Yeah, they don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and can't. In a lot of situations, because of the low reimbursements, a lot of companies are actually just in a bind where they can't pay for it because they don't earn enough in that part of the store, like in the pharmacy, to be able to even give you more hours.
So let me ask you, do pharmacy make money then?
That's really tough, because a lot of you have to do extra services to make money. You're not going to make money filling prescriptions.
I keep coming back to her. I remember she was working at an independent pharmacy a long time ago. They would turn away some drugs because they were just like, oh, we don't get reimbursed for that or whatnot.
Yeah, especially when you're an independent, you have to do that sometimes.
But we're talking about the bigger retail, like the CVS's, the Walmarts. Do those make money?
So let's put CVS in its own category.
Okay.
Because they own, so Pharmacy
Yes.
and how pharmacy insurance works is your insurance company contracts with what's called a pharmacy benefit manager or a PBM to manage the pharmacy insurance.
Right.
So like when you go to a pharmacy and you have a copay, that pharmacy benefit manager, based on information given to them by the plan, kind of takes care of all of that pharmacy stuff in the middle, but they also carve a piece off.
Yep.
Like they're incentivized to like get a bigger piece of the pie. So they like take what arguably is a bigger share of the pie than they should be for like the services that they are providing.
That's a problem.
So they siphon money off.
They basically siphon
because
money
I'm
off.
trying to generalize this for the audience.
Yeah. They siphon money off. And so they like one good video that could be worth posting is his name is Dr. Glockenflecken, and he has a very funny PBM video that is very
the
pharmacy benefit manager. Sorry, I did not define that. Pharmacy benefit manager, aka PBM video that's very generalizable to a general audience and explains it really well.
He does so many great videos, honestly, on insurance and the nonsense that he sees. So
yeah, and so how this all factors in is because they're not reimbursing pharmacies well, because another thing they do is they steer prescriptions to their own pharmacies.
Yep. So the ones that pay out, they're going to steer to their pharmacy.
Yeah, they're like, maybe you can fill your first refill at a Walgreens, but then you actually have to use our mail order pharmacy after that.
You're always like, they want you to do mail order.
Yes, we have that problem because of where I work.
Because I don't understand it. Like, I just want to go to the pharmacy and pick up my stuff, and she's like, no, they want you to do mail order.
Yes, I keep trying to explain.
Oh, yes, because and so they want you to do mail order, and so one of the people that we're going to follow in the film has she's doing a lot of advocacy around pharmacy choice and not having to be forced to mail order because of how her son's prescriptions were improperly shipped, and her son went into transplant rejection because of medication shipped on a hot day, and from a mail order because they don't ice them or anything if it's room temperature medication, and they sit in your mailbox. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes it comes fine, but a lot of people run into that issue. But the reason they steer you to the mail order is they can control cost that way.
Yep.
Yes.
They're like, hey, if we just put everyone in this one place, we don't have to pay all these pharmacies anything. We just keep it in-house.
Exactly. Much cheaper.
And so you would think CVS, who owns one of these pharmacy benefit managers, would staff their stores super well.
Right.
No, they just think of it as a separate thing.
Yes.
They're like, oh, the pharmacy doesn't make money. The PBM makes money.
Exactly.
And so they
the
just don't
pharmacy
staff
does
their
not make money.
Right.
For the most part. I don't think it's like, when I say don't make money, for some independent pharmacies, like let's define independent versus chains for a general audience.
Yes, please.
Yes. So a chain pharmacy is like your Walgreens, your CVS, the ones in the grocery store.
Big corporate.
Big corporate. An independent pharmacy, let's think like mom and pop, small store, like the kind of pharmacies that most people don't know exists anymore.
Are they still around?
Yeah.
They're still around, but it's really hard to stay open as one. You can't stay open as one just filling prescriptions. And that's what we're going to talk about, other services they can do, such as vaccines or testing or having really robust like vitamin section. There's other things you can do to supplement your income besides just selling prescriptions.
And that's why CVS is pushing shots for COVID, flu vaccines. I want you to jump in here because I feel like I'm
no, you're good. I like your questions.
I like your take.
Stuff I lived.
This stuff I'm trying to figure out. Like, I know I got a sneak preview of you because you've done this. I'm a little bit more educated than most because of her, but I'm coming from the general listening audience that was like, okay, explain that.
No, I love this. And it helps me because it helps us because our team is so pharmacist heavy. It really helps to have that outside perspective to be like, what?
What does that mean? Yeah.
What does that mean? And so, yes. So if we think about, like, I'm going to come out and say it for the record. vaccines are good, okay?
Yes,
I know
they
it's
are.
so tricky. Yes, they are
Get
good.
vaccinated, please. Like, so we'll come out and say that. However, there's only so many people who are eligible for certain immunizations at any given time.
Exactly.
You can only ask and recommend and be like, this is what I recommend, this is what I'm asking you to do. As a professional, you should not be forcing people like, hey, I have to ask you every single time if you want a tetanus shot. And you're like, yo, I just got a tetanus shot 5 years ago. I'm not due for 5 years. Stop asking me. Like, it should be like, hey, you ask, you make sure that they are up to date on their vaccinations, and then you let it go.
Exactly.
Right.
I agree.
And then, but a lot of places are incentivized to push the vaccinations because they do make good money on them.
So let me pause you right there. I go to a doctor, and Sammy actually did a vaccine clinic out of his office to do flu vaccines for the store.
Yes.
So that's another way.
Yeah.
That's another way.
Send you
Yeah.
out into
So
the
setting
world
up
to
those
do them.
clinics, and which, I mean, that's one way because it's like, cool, you're getting a lot of vaccinations at once. But some of these stores, some district managers will tie the number of hours your store gets for technician hours to your performance on these vaccines.
Yeah.
So if you don't give enough vaccines, they will cut your tech hours. And we have someone who sent us a recording of that. They recorded their district manager saying this.
I
Wow.
bet he was pissed when Can you use that in the film?
So it was recorded in a state that is a one-party consent state. And so we're learning a lot about our recording laws because we have a lot of recordings sent to us.
I'm sure you do.
True,
I'm sure you have an entertainment attorney helping.
We have an attorney as well.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But yes, for that recording that was shared with us, he said, and we haven't like shared it anywhere yet, but he came out and said, you can't, like, if you don't give so many shots, I'll cut your hours. I'll cut your tech hours.
Oh my gosh.
So
That's terrible.
I remember when Sammy was working for CVS, she would have to open the pharmacy on a Saturday. She had no tech out.
Yeah.
And she was there by herself from open to close.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's just crazy.
Going back to just like kind of contextualizing this for a general audience, think about, so your pharmacist is there open to close. And now that's a lot more common during the week as well. Like I was alone on weekends too, and it was manageable. Well, you were alone. I usually I had tech at least. But a lot of pharmacists are alone, even during the week in some cases. And so if you think, let's go back to thinking about the process of dropping off a prescription. It is one pharmacist who, in some cases, does not eat the entire shift.
Yep.
Now some stores are getting better and they give them lunch and they let them close, but then people knock on the gate.
You're not really left alone.
And, or people will work through lunch.
Yep.
Because they're like, I feel behind.
Yep.
But they are typing the prescription into the system. They are checking their own work. They are filling their own prescription. Yep. And so if you either miss a mistake from the doctor or make a mistake once, your brain already made that mistake. No. You're not going to catch it necessarily. Exactly. That's why you have multiple people, a tech and a pharmacist, looking at prescriptions before it goes out the door. But if you only have that one set of fatigued eyes, you're going to miss those potentially fatal and very dangerous drug interactions that we talked about before.
That's terrible.
So is this what got you into wanting to produce media, this whole crisis?
No, so I like I said, I am a writer and I love storytelling. I just think it's so, like, the human condition is so fascinating. I love like fiction, nonfiction, it's all great. So I've wanted to do like something like this. Not necessarily, this is a whole new world. Like documentary isn't necessarily a place that I saw myself, but I'm very fortunate and blessed that I've gotten here. Like, so the spark was there to do something creative like this. This was just the catalyst into a project that was viable enough to go forward.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so cool.
That works.
Yeah.
That works.
So that is kind of there's so much I could go into. So like whichever direction you want to take me, there's like so many nuances and layers to this project that we.
So I think we're still at the caveat that our listeners are going to listen to this and say, what is she really talking about? So
Yeah, definitely.
make sure you explain that, like what the film is, why is this so important?
Yes.
I
So
want
let's
to be
just
sure that when people listen to the episode, they're
Good
like,
point.
yes.
I get it.
Good point.
Yeah. So let's take a step back and before we get into any of these topics, so the first thing I want to do is just explain to our audience today before I start talking about other stuff and getting into that nitty gritty, what the heck is this film?
Yes.
And so after we explain what a pharmacist does, then the next thing is we're going to talk about some of the working conditions I'll go into as we talk through this episode. So things like not being staffed appropriately,
Right.
talking about pharmacies not being reimbursed, being forced and incentivized to sell more vaccines, pharmacists working alone, people miscarrying in stores, people dying in stores. We'll start getting into some of that. Whoa, this doesn't sound like what you talked about in the beginning of your documentary, where you're talking about this is how a pharmacy should work. That is not how a pharmacy is working.
No.
Right.
And so we'll kind of create some of that. Whoa, you said this is supposed to be going on, but this is going on over here. And so these are some of the working conditions. And then we'll get into some of the history and like why it's like that. Because COVID is where a lot of people, so if you think back to the last 3 years, a lot of the general public first started noticing these issues when they're either long lines, delays, or they couldn't get their prescriptions filled. Before
Why
that,
do you think COVID did it? Like you said, they had these problems before COVID, but why is COVID special? What happened there?
Yeah, so I think the reason that COVID is special is because the workload shifted. Because at first with all the vaccine, because it was we didn't have a vaccine.
Nope.
Right.
So obviously no one had it oh, a big swath of the population is eligible for this vaccine, like basically everyone.
Right.
And so they had public health clinics and big clinics for a while, but then because most other vaccines are given in pharmacies, they just turned it over and said, pharmacies, you fit this in your workflow with not necessarily extra help or like limited extra help. So some people you would never have a chance to get back to filling prescriptions.
Yeah.
You would just be stuck in the immunization room, giving shot after shot after shot while the number of prescriptions that you need to be filled just piles up while you keep giving shots.
Exactly.
So let me ask you this question. The pharmacy is still making money off the shots, correct? So they're profiting off the shots, but they're not getting money from the lack of prescriptions being filled.
Correct.
Okay.
But
I want to make sure people are following the economics.
So they have a reason to push.
Thank you for turning that light on. I was gonna
I was like, it's getting dark.
But yeah, they have a reason to keep pushing the vaccines too, because that's really where the money is going to be. So they're not going to care as much that you're 5 days behind.
That's why
if you're on top of giving your vaccine.
That's why you have stores weeks behind, because they're giving out so many vaccines.
This is part of it.
That's part of it. That's part of it. It's mostly because they're giving out so many vaccines. Also the burnout. Like a lot of people soul searched during COVID because they're like, whoa, this really big catastrophic event happened. Why am I in the back of this store getting yelled at?
Right.
I'm gonna leave. And so enough people, there's not a shortage of pharmacists.
Right. No. That's exactly what she was saying.
That's like a one thing I want to say to the general audience, because all of the news articles are like, there's a shortage of pharmacists. There's a shortage of pharmacists who want to work in the conditions that are out there. And so a lot of people just left the profession entirely, or they went to new jobs. And so they can't hire, some of the stores are offering, I'm going to say this very publicly, very slowly, $100,000 as the sign-on bonus, as an incentive to get pharmacists, but they still can't get anyone to take it.
So
they're like,
right there.
Not worth it.
They're offering $100,000 sign-on bonus, but they're not just writing you a check. Here's $100,000.
No, they tie your soul into it. It's probably a 5-year contract. Like,
okay,
because
when people hear, they're giving $100,000 away, people are going to be like, oh, but when you literally break it down and say they're not giving you a $100,000 check, it's over 5 years, blah blah blah. Then more of a bigger deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so they don't give it to you right away. But even with that, like that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
That's a lot of
absolutely.
money. And people, like we have a store who is giving out that. I don't think there was 100. I think theirs was 75. Last I checked, there was a store in our area giving out 75,000 to be a pharmacy manager, which is to be the manager in charge of the pharmacy in the back.
The PIC.
Yep.
Yes, the PIC, the pharmacist in charge. And 2 people tried to take it, and 2 people just turned the money back in, basically, because they give you some up front.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so they'll give you like maybe 20,000 up front, and they just went, here's your money back. They couldn't even make it through the probationary period where they could keep that money.
Oh my
Because the conditions were so poor. They're like, forget this, here's your money back. I don't even want it.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
So you might have told Sammy this, but you work at an independent or a hospital?
I work in a hospital now.
Okay.
So I work at a hospital. I'm totally removed from the community side of things at this point in my career. So I don't know. Hospital has its own set of issues, but it's like pharmacy is so nuanced where like the scope of this film can't even get into hospital pharmacy because outpatient pharmacy is big enough. Like retail pharmacy is big enough.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Like that's its own, like it's totally separate world.
Exactly.
So would you consider doing another film where you dive into hospital pharmacy?
Maybe we haven't taken anything off the table, so we could. I don't feel like maybe I'm just fortunate to work in a good hospital like that's decent. Like there's understaffing problems, there's metrics, like there's corporatization of hospitals as well, but you still are sheltered from a little bit of it when you're there because you like the stress is just different.
Right.
If there is stress, like I don't really, honestly, like I feel stress when it's like actual life and death situations because they're calling me for drugs like this person is dying, can you hurry?
Oh my gosh.
Yes, I'll hurry.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel stress in those situations, but it's not from like this person's yelling at me because I have a $1 copay on a medication, or I've been yelled at because it's too cheap before. Someone yelled at me because their copay was too low.
It was like in the world.
It was 5 cents, and they're like, "It's too cheap.
Okay.
Why is it so low?" And I was like, "What do you mean?"
Like, what is this? What is it's like a prank? Wow. Oh my gosh. Where were we at before? So we were talking about.
We were talking about COVID and metrics.
Yeah. Okay. So
COVID and
about
metrics, and
where
that's why COVID made it worse because there's metrics, COVID, and like you couldn't get prescription, and you know that these prescriptions are life sustaining for people.
Yes.
Like they need these prescriptions to live, and so you're just like super torn because you're like, I need to get back to filling prescriptions. I know vaccines are important, they are really good for public health, but I can't be in the shot room and be out here filling prescriptions and be at the counter counseling on prescriptions because a lot of times people aren't given information at their doctor's office anymore because they're like, oh, your pharmacy will go over it with you. And so having enough time to go through medication, like newly prescribed medications with patients is also really important.
Right. Because
a lot of times people are just prescribed a new medication and they have no idea why. Mm-hmm. That's why COVID was kind of the catalyst because it's just the workload went up and then the staffing went down because people just started quitting because they're like, forget this. One of the reasons I was like, you know what, I want to personally vote with my feet. I'm not in the worst situation by any means. This is my part-time job and the company is fine. But I was like, I don't want to be a part of a system that incentivizes pharmacists to make unsafe choices because that's what it is at the end of the day. Pharmacists are being incentivized. So they're like, in a sense, being forced to make unsafe choices every day. Mm-hmm. And pharmacists are saying, no, it is my license. It is my duty to keep people safe. This environment doesn't allow me to do that. So I would rather just leave.
Exactly.
Than be a part of this. So like, we have pharmacists just like doing completely different careers.
Yep, I've heard that.
People who are a lot of pharmacists are pretty financially savvy and they've planned it out. So they're like, I don't have to think about my next move for 2 years. So I can just sit at home for 2 years and collect my thoughts and regroup.
Figure it out.
figure it out. A lot of people ended up taking mental health leaves.
Yes.
Like a lot of people were like, I am so depressed, like to the point where I don't think I'm going to be okay. And so they're like, I need to like at least take a leave of absence from my job so I don't like harm myself.
Yep, I've seen that
from the pressures from work. Like we have talked to a lot of people who have unfortunately thought about dying by suicide because of the working conditions.
Yeah.
And a lot of depression that's unmasked because of the working conditions.
Yeah.
That blows my mind.
Yeah. There's actually stats like pharmacists are in the top 10 for professions for suicide.
Right.
And so that like is a pretty telling statistic there. There's a lot of more like what's called moral injury, where it's not like your moral code, basically it can't align with your environment that you're in because it's asking you to do things like basically against your morals constantly all the time.
Right.
And it's just like that's really damaging, like mentally to a person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's true. Something we do want to do like with this film, because a lot of people think, especially we did the trailer you can see on our website the way we did, because we're like, this is the most shocking thing we have right now and it will get us money. But that's not where our film ends. Like we could talk about doom and gloom all day, but I want to talk about kind of like rounding out our film, because like you got to shock people and like make them invested and make them care. But we also have to make them care about pharmacy.
Right.
And so part of that is letting people know why pharmacy is even important. And so tying it back into like, no, like these are people who are protecting you from life-threatening interactions. That's the very most basic thing they do. But a pharmacist has all new pharmacists since the year 2000 or around there have doctorates in pharmacy. And so these are doctorate level professionals who have a lot of capability for improving the American healthcare system. And we want to let the general public know what those things are. For example, an example I'm going to use that I really like to use, there's two. So two examples. First one is what's called pharmacogenomics. So what pharmacogenomics is basically like everyone has genes inside of them, like their genetics, right?
Right.
Those genetics interact with your pills. And right now it's basically a one-size-fits-all system.
Yeah.
But if you can have pharmacists like look at your genes and be like, well, this is why you're having all these side effects on these certain medications, because your genes they don't work with those pills. And so if you can like prevent side effects more upstream because you have pharmacists looking at genetic and genomic profiles, then it would be saving a lot of healthcare dollars and patient harm, because they're like, let me tailor the medication to you more. And so that's like a field that's they talk about in school a lot, but isn't very big because people don't go into it because it's not supported like with money by outside of like really niche areas, because people like a lot of things aren't going to be able to flourish if the general public has no idea that's even a thing that could be possible. Like, wow, I don't have to suffer through 4 different antidepressants before I find the right one.
Exactly.
I can figure it out a little bit quicker because like a pharmacist looked at my genomic profile. Why aren't more pharmacists doing that? We should be supporting that. The other thing that pharmacists can do to really help a general public is think about it like an older relative of yours who's on 20 medications plus, or yourself. A lot of people, people of all ages are on like 20 medications. There's something called deprescribing, because a lot of times doctors will be like, you're having this problem, here's more pills. You're having this problem, here's more pills.
Yeah.
But a pharmacist can look at that and go, you don't need to be on 20 pills.
Exactly.
You need to be on like 7 pills. Because the reason you're having all these problems is because of the other pills. And so that, again, there's not money in that right now. Right now, it's not like that financially supported. You really have to be like an entrepreneur. You really have to like have your own business model where you're getting patients to pay you consulting fees to help deprescribe them. Or like some insurance companies will incentivize like people to sit down with a pharmacist to like go through their medication because it saves the insurance company money. But again, those all have metrics and quotas, and they're not giving the person the amount of time to actually go through their profile and like really look, okay, what medication should you be on? Because everything has a time clock. Like, oh, can you do that in 10 minutes though? When maybe it should take more than 10 minutes to look through an entire person's profile.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's how it is.
And like those are the cool things that pharmacists could be doing. And we want to show like these are options that pharmacists could be doing if you fix some of these other issues like staffing and reimbursement over here. And some of it has to do with some of the reasons we're here is because of legislation and different types of reform that need to happen. So we'll touch on that. We'll touch on things like unionization as an option.
You think the government or needs to step in and regulate the pharmacy industry?
Let me tell you a fun fact for the general public about how pharmacy is regulated that we learned. Well, we didn't learn it, but it was reinforced the other day by someone. So each state has a board of pharmacy, which is responsible for overseeing pharmacists and pharmacies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those boards of pharmacies are appointed in each state, usually by the governor. Okay. And so they'll appoint people to sit on this board, and it's, for the most part, they're just keeping track of your license. So each pharmacist has a pharmacist license, and they're making sure you follow all the rules and whatnot. And they each state has state laws about how to do pharmacy, and so they make sure those laws are being followed. However, the big corporations, so CVS is the most egregious of all of them.
Yep.
They're on boards of pharmacy, usually as like the chairperson in 20 states.
So they're on the board that would regulate the pharmacies.
Yep.
Shouldn't that... Do you remember when Microsoft was getting sued for having a monopoly back in the 90s?
Oh, yes.
That's where I'm going with that. That's an overstep of power, I would say.
You would think, but it's not illegal. It's just questionable behavior, but it's not illegal behavior.
Yep.
And so they tried to get on boards of pharmacy in every state. All these big companies do.
Yep.
So nobody looks at that and says, that's suspicious. Maybe we shouldn't let that happen.
You would think.
No one knows. People don't know. That's something we're still like researching into, like how it's actually one person gave us really good insight in an interview that we just had. So this person has asked to remain anonymous because they're like, hey, don't throw my name in this. But they said it's lobbying money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, they have money to lobby the governor, where a regular pharmacist or a regular because it has to be made up of pharmacists and like usually 2 public members who are non-pharmacists in a lot of states, or like 1 or 2 people who, to just keep it a little bit balanced, but you want pharmacists regulating pharmacists.
Right. Yeah.
So you know what's going on.
Exactly.
Yes. And so like these companies will lobby the governor. Oh, this person has these great credentials. Like, look at this person. You should appoint them. And they're like,
okay,
sure.
Okay, I don't know anything about this.
Yeah, I don't know anything, because they're a general public member. And so they're like, oh yeah. They're like, they hear CVS, Walgreens, and that's who you think of when you think of pharmacy.
Exactly.
So you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. That makes sense that they would be on the board. But then they are like able to kind of they're not necessarily going to put in rules that make their companies like look bad.
Exactly.
When people watch this show, what do you want them to get out of it?
The documentary?
Yeah,
with the documentary. So what we want people, like, there's layers, right? And so there's something for everyone.
Right.
Base layer. You can just not yell at the pharmacist in the text. Like, basic 101 is human decency.
Yes.
Like, that's step 1. But we want them to feel a level of outrage and kind of like shock, because they're like, what's happening? Whoa, that is like really, really shocking. And so, because a lot of times public outrage is what gets things to actually change. Like, pharmacy, unfortunately, has this tendency to be its own echo chamber. So we yell about it internally a lot because people are scared of losing their jobs. And so they yell about it in safe spaces or anonymously online, but they don't want to branch out from that. So the public just has no idea anything's happening. So we want to create some public outcry. Like, wow, this could be anyone. Like, because we have some patient stories, like, that we're going to follow some people. Like, for example, Loretta's her name, the one whose son went into transplant rejection. That could be anyone's son.
Right,
if
exactly.
Insulin comes and it's hot, and you're a type 1 diabetic and you need insulin, like, that is a life and death problem. Or we have another person, because we're talking about how COVID kind of was the catalyst and got really public attention on this issue. We have someone who was sick with COVID at home, couldn't get out very easily to the pharmacy, and they couldn't get any of their medication for 2 weeks.
Oh man.
And all they needed was like an inhaler.
Oh my
and
God.
some like steroids and some like Tesla pearls. It was just like they didn't need that much, but they couldn't get it. Sorry, the cough drops.
No, those little yellow pills that you got in the cough.
Little cough beads jargon slip. But they needed like a cough syrup, a steroid, and an inhaler. And they're just sitting at home like sick, not able to breathe with COVID because they kept going. And because the pharmacy was so far behind, they just then never got to her stuff for 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
And that could be anyone. That could be every single person is touched by pharmacy, because anyone can get sick. It's like, that's one of the things with this podcast, is letting people know everyone is one accident or injury or illness away from having something like chronic pain.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It's disability is the one like underprivileged or minority group that every single person may enter into like any day of their life. You never know if it's your time, if that's going to happen to you. And so it's like, no, these issues touch everyone.
Yeah.
That's true.
So outrage, because this is everyone's issue. And so public outrage is what really moves the needle, because some of the films and like books and things we look towards are things like Silent Spring. The reason we have an EPA, that book in the 60s, is it was about so Silent Spring was an author who was like, we need to regulate how chemicals are used in our environment. Because she basically said, imagine a silent spring. So basically where all of the pesticides and stuff have killed off all of the birds and bugs and like all that vibrance of spring. And people were like, oh, my spring could be like that. Like this really, she just painted this desolate picture of what the world could look like. And that got enough public outrage to get the Environmental Protection Agency started.
Wow.
And then there's another film that we like to reference as a kind of like, we would love to do that, it's called The Bleeding Edge. It's about the medical device industry and how unregulated that industry is. And they actually were able to get at least one of the medical devices pulled from the market because it was so unsafe.
I think we watched that. Yeah, I think we watched that. Sounds familiar. Yeah.
I think it was on Netflix.
It was on Netflix, yeah. So
I'm pretty sure
it was on Netflix. We actually, one of the people who was in that film, Angie, the main character, she actually works at the pharmacy where we're going to film in New York.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
So, yeah, so that's pretty cool. And so we know that films can make a difference. Or another person we've talked to, like we were able to get some footage of, is the Pharmacist documentary with Dan Schneider about his son in the opioid crisis, also on Netflix. It's a docuseries.
Remember The Pharmacist?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we watched that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that guy, his story, because he's like, it helped my advocacy a lot in being able to help combat the opioid epidemic and like whatnot. But he's also like, it paved the way for other people to start doing stuff on it, because like Dope Sick came out because that showrunner watched The Pharmacist and he was like, oh, I have an idea for a show. And
the
so
showrunner
then he
was actually on Buffy the Vampire
Slayer. Oh, really? Oh, I
it
didn't
was
know that.
it was the Jonathan. The
showrunner
is Jonathan. I forgot he did that. Yeah.
I just wanted to throw that out. But yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, such a small, like all these connections, small world. So like
you'll find
just,
media is it's very personable. You'll find a crew and you'll be like, okay, I like you. We'll work on other projects together. It's very
nice.
camaraderie, if you'd say.
Yeah.
And that's what we found, honestly, like, because people are like, wow, you for being a small team of like really only our cinematographer and a couple of our camera operators have any experience in this industry. They're like, wow, you were able to do really well. And a lot of that's because of that camaraderie. We literally will reach out to people and be like, will you talk to us and like give us tips? And people are like willing to talk to us and give us connections and help us out. So it's a very, honestly, so far a pretty friendly industry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, as soon as she told me that you were coming on, I was been researching your film and wanting to talk to you because I've been excited to because this is such a dangerous topic. People don't understand that, and I'm glad that you're shedding light on it.
I agree, obviously.
Thank you. I appreciate that like a lot because it's very meaningful.
Where can people donate to the crowdfunding? Get more information about this? Where can people?
Yes. So there's a few ways that people can either donate or learn more about us. So we have a GoFundMe. It's on our website. We'll also provide the link so that you guys can see it in the show notes. Yep, show notes, it'll be down there. But our website is shotswiththat.com. And all social media, our handle is at shotswiththat. And so you can learn more. We have, we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn and TikTok. So you can go watch some of our previous videos, learn more. If you have questions, DMs are open. So just feel free to DM us. Our email is also on our website if you want to learn more. And just like, we're a pretty friendly bunch. We like chatting with people. So
are you the main person that runs it?
So I am directing it at this time. So I am
very cool.
I just followed you today. My
perfect.
Robert 1950 Studio.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
With Nelly.
Nelly, yes.
The rapper.
Yes.
That's If you could follow me back,
because I'll follow you back. Yeah.
Industry connections that I could send your way. Like if you ever need like cast more film people, I can help you out with that. I know a person that comes to mind right now that would love to join your crew.
Oh, 100%. We would love that. Like, I don't know if you have if you have any time after the show to talk a little bit. But,
yeah.
But we can do finish with the outro. But yes, you can look at the GoFundMe in the show notes, hit us up on our website or on social media. In addition, there are opportunities if you are a pharmacist or technician or a patient. Lots of patients and opportunities for the general public to also share their story. We have a form on our website. It's just called Share Your Story. You can either be anonymous or not. If you have a story about a pharmacy experience, either positive or negative, drop it in there. And like take your information protection really seriously. The more stories, the better, because fun plug, in addition to doing the film version, we're also doing a book because there's a lot of content and it lends itself really well to like a deeper dive in a book form. So we're collecting all of those stories for that book.
Have you ever thought about doing a podcast with the movie?
So that's one of the things we had kind of a brainstorming session today, and we're trying to leverage our content. And podcast is one of the things that popped up to see if we could maybe do that with some of the content that we have.
I know that's what they did with the show on Discovery. They released the podcast first, and then the show came out. So that's new marketing for people in the industry, and networks like that because you could sell it in a bundle.
Yes, that would be super cool.
Double whammy of content.
It's true.
Yeah, because it could be like you have book, film, podcast, like triple whammy them.
Exactly. Nice.
So definitely we would love those stories. And if you are compelled to give a little bit more, we have sponsorship opportunities for individuals starting at $1,000. You can become a sponsor. If you're a business that starts at $3,000. You can also be an associate producer for an individual that starts at $10,000, but there is an opportunity for a return on investment potential for that. And if you would like to be an executive producer for an individual, that starts at $30,000. So there is an opportunity for a little bit more of a return on investment if anybody is interested in those levels. But honestly, if you want to buy us a sandwich in the airport and you give us like $10, like it all spends the same. So
Absolutely.
Yes, right?
we will
Yes.
take
I love
anything.
that.
So yes.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Sammy, I feel like I've monopolized.
No, it was so good because
What do you want to say?
no, just because like I've lived this, just like you. I mean,
Yes.
we have very similar stories, starting off as techs and interns, then working in the retail world, and I left in 2021. Got out of it. So, for me, like I've been part of this. That's why I'm so interested in it. And I think it's so great that you're doing it because I do think more people should know what we've been going through, what's happening. And I think it's great that you were here to ask questions because you're asking questions I wouldn't think of because I just know, like, I know about the PBM issues. I know how people acted during COVID. I know what it was like, the pharmacy benefit manager.
Yeah, you
See, still doing
really
it.
You gotta say yourself. It's hard. It's really hard to check yourself and be like, right, general audience.
Yes, I can talk like side effects and I can get that down when I talk to patients. But when I get to this higher stuff, I'm just like, oh yeah, people don't know this.
I hear it from you, but when I hear it from her, it like brings me in. It's like an emotional connection.
I know she's a storyteller. Did you not hear that?
Yeah. Like when she was telling me about the pharmacist that died of a heart attack in Indy, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
This is such a problem.
It is.
People just don't know about it.
No, they don't. And it's so relatable too. So just like one other thing I'll say about it being really generalizable, a lot of industries are really messed up right now. So a lot of people will be able to relate to this because they'll be like, oh snap, that's my work. That's me too. Like things like the railroad strikes that are going on and those workers' rights issues. Like there's a lot of labor violations, a lot of industries that people will be like, oh, I relate to that.
Right.
That's a good point, unfortunately.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Writer's strike in Hollywood and all that.
Same everywhere.
Same difference.
You'll learn about that. The more and more you get into this, like you are in production, correct? You're already in production and everything.
We're already in production. It's like a weird hybrid because since we don't have money, it's like half pre-production and half production. But yes, we're in production.
Where are you going next? New York?
We're going to New York. And so
what are those dates of production?
So we are going we fly out April 5th and we are doing a 3-day shoot and then coming back on the 9th.
Okay.
I'm actually staying because I want to like do a little solo vacay just to like hang out. And so I'm my husband and daughter were gracious to be like, it's fine. And so I'm gonna hang out till the 12th. But that'll be in Tannersville, New York. So kind of upstate, an hour from Albany.
Okay.
And we'll also be in Tannersville, Phoenicia, and Woodstock are the places that we're going.
Wow, that's cool.
Yes.
I don't think that's going to be like that kind of Woodstock.
I'm sorry, but
a little bit different,
But wow.
But yeah, no, it is that Woodstock though.
How many hours a day are you going to be shooting?
So right now, it's kind of some of it's flex because two of the interviews we're capturing are actually anonymous, and so it's like those could
like the mob.
Yeah, so it could be like who knows how long that kind of stuff is going to be, but like there are people who happen to be like, it's people from our team who it's like, you don't know that I'm in this movie, and I was like, we don't know that you're in this movie. And so they're going to share their story, and so it's kind of more flex, but it'll probably be 8 to 10 hour shoot days.
Yeah.
3 days. Yeah,
because most people don't know, like the typical set time is anywhere from 8 to 15 hours on a set.
Yes.
Just to break that down to the general public.
That's true. Yeah.
Most people don't know that.
No, most people don't know that. Like 8's a short shoot day.
Absolutely.
Like, so it'll probably be closer to 10 once you factor in, because not only do you have to like shoot the people that you're following, you have to, if you're doing a sit down interview, which we're doing a couple of, you have to set everything up, lights, your camera, getting the person briefed on what they're going to talk about. And it's like,
I'm assuming you're shooting a 2-camera interview.
2-camera interview. And so, it's straight on and then
to the side.
But they're both anonymous. And so Ethan is trying to toy with, he's like, I don't like the traditional way they do anonymous interviews, the drug dealer style. He's like, no, so much more creative. Like, he's like, if you do like the end of a hallway and you like had them at the end of the hall or like down the stairs or like close-ups on their hands. Like he's like, you can get way more artistic with your
Very cool.
like anonymous interviews. He also was like, maybe we deep fake it instead and just like overlay someone else's face.
Wow.
And so he's like, the technology's there.
It's true, yeah, but
you could do that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I never thought of.
Yeah, so that, and then we're gonna do some more like fly on the wall type shooting when we're out there. Like
in your film.
Yeah, what?
Tom Cruise deep fake
Tom Cruise's face.
Tom Cruise's face. I know. Yeah, we should.
But I'm just saying, now people can do that. So yeah,
you can do it. It can be anyone.
Yeah.
And so, we have those 2 interviews slated for our, and we'll have a couple sit down interviews with a couple pharmacy owners. Okay. And then Wellness RX is like one of the hopeful pharmacies that's opening a nonprofit pharmacy. Okay. And so we think that's a really cool model because they found a way to be able to stay open and keep their business running as a new nonprofit pharmacy. And we don't know how, like, the process of how they've done that, which is why we're going to do the interview.
Right. Okay.
So when you approach pharmacies to be in this documentary, do some jump at the opportunity and some are just like, no?
I bet. Yeah.
No.
So here's what happens. And it's been really interesting. So when we reach out to people, because at first it was mostly just through social media, a lot of DMing people, and people, we have what's called in the film industry, in the documentary industry, a pre-interview, which is you interview them informally off the record to make sure it's even like the right fit.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of those calls. People love doing that. Well, people jump at that opportunity. They're like off the record, just talking, like getting to vent my story out.
Love
do that. Love it. As soon as we go, cool. Do you want to be in the documentary? Even anonymously. People are like, no. Whoa.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Because people get fired for the weirdest stuff. There's a pharmacist out there. His handle is RX Comedy. His name is Dr. Maurice Shaw. Yep. He got fired for doing stand-up comedy.
That's what you were saying.
From Walgreens, yeah.
From Walgreens. Yeah. He had done it for like 5 years and they had no problem with it. One day they woke up and went, we don't like this.
Yep.
Fired him for it.
Do you listen to the Accidental Pharmacists?
Yeah, he's one of the people. He's going to be in our film.
Really?
So,
yeah, I saw him on the website.
How about the other guy that stopped being a pharmacist?
Oh, Mitch Lee. He used to do the Retail Pharmacy podcast.
I wish that we could find Mitch.
Yeah.
Like, no one knows where Mitch went. And it's really sad. If you're, like, again, I'll say it again. Mitch, if you're listening,
please
just let someone know that you're okay.
Yeah.
Because the way your podcast and your story, like, the way you went dark was, like, kind of really scary for everyone. So if you're listening,
please reach
out. Let us know you're okay.
Exactly.
Reach out.
There's so many people worried about him. So
So a lot of those like quote pharmacy influencers and podcast folks, we actually have connected with most of them. So like there's a lot of different meme sites, like Accidental Pharmacist is one, RX Comedy, The Cynical Pharmacist. We've talked to all of them, and some are more involved than others, but
I think that was the kind of inspiration to start our podcast, because Sammy was listening to that, and we were like, we could so do this. We could so do this. And we just finally
and it was
just
COVID.
Did it.
So what else are you going to do?
During COVID, we were just like, let's
launch
this.
So,
and then now we have a podcast network. And
oh, that's amazing. So you have a podcast network, eh? Are you open? So if we like wanted to get in on that and become a podcast on your network.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's one thing we should definitely talk about. You can edit it out. So. Let me know when the like official.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we'll let you.
Before we actually end this, is there anything you want the general public to know
that we didn't go over?
This is your time to shine.
So for the general public, I'm just gonna go back to kindness and patience and just knowing the pharmacy team is on your team. Those pharmacists and those technicians, they're suffering from a lot of burnout, a lot of moral injury. It is hard back there, but at the end of the day, they want to help you. And just be patient, be kind. Like, we know it's frustrating. We get it. Like, there's so many times where someone's been frustrated, and we get it.
Yes.
But like, we're on the same team, fighting the same battles. So please just approach the pharmacy with kindness, and also just know it's a more complicated issue than you realize.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of this show
Yeah.
and this episode.
It was so fun.
I was really excited about it.
Yeah, I was too. I was like, I'm really excited about it.
Able to do on this podcast.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to The Painful Truth of Living with Chronic Pain with Robby and Sammi. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to the Limitless Podcast Network's own channel, Instagram, and all things social media. And we'll see you all real soon.